really don't know what to say to introduce this review, so I'm just gonna start the review. So Another is a 12 episode horror anime, and yup, alarm bells should be ringing. We haven't had a great track record when it comes to horror anime, especially as of late, but I went into Another with an open mind. I hadn't really heard much about the show before watching it, and the thumbnail art looked quite nice. To my surprise, the first 2 episodes of Another were quite good, but not because they'd done anything right, because they didn't really do anything at all. They used mystery to cloud over every part of the show. I wasn't sure if Another was going to be full of monsters or a well-made suspense horror story. This is quite good, but they have to uncover the story sooner or later. And when they did, oh boy did the show start to plummet. Episode by episode, Another got progressively bad. And like I said, not because it started off good, but because it started off as nothing. The very second they started to reveal the story, around the first death, the show's quality, pace and writing went downhill. They started off not really revealing much, hinting that Another could be a smart horror story that didn't really rely on jump scares or ghouls to create its horror. Instead, it done exactly that. They used cheap jump scares, over-the-top gory death scenes and painfully bad plot twists to create the horror. They should have just kept the story to themselves and created a 12 episode mystery. It would have been much better than what they ended up revealing. As the show developed itself into an even worse story, everything just started to fall apart. I can't even give credit to the concept of the story, even that was dull and unoriginal. It basically boiled down to a survival game where people go insane just because. It was woefully unrealistic. If the concept of the story was bad, the execution was excruciatingly hard to watch. Each episode they took the remaining parts of the show and just pissed all over them. Every single possible piece of story was made into a laughably bad blob of anime. It got progressively worse as the episodes went on, almost as if they knew they were creating something terrible. What they should have done is focused less on the supernatural parts of the story, as they're harder to believe and harder to make a good story from. They should have focused more on the characters and actually developed them, showing us how they would gradually change as they got more scared. Not only did the writing become more stupider as the anime went on, but the deaths got even more ridiculous. So ridiculous that I actually started laughing out loud at how dumb some of them were. So okay, it was a poorly made horror, we get it, but that's not really what makes this anime so bad. What makes this anime so terribly bad is the complete and utter avoidance of certain aspects of the world. Despite what was going on, not once did the police come and ask why so many people were just dead. Surely if people have been dying for decades in this classroom, the whole world would be talking about it. There's no way that they would even keep the school open. Even then, why didn't they just move to another town? If people die every year in a certain class, why enroll in that school? Go somewhere else. Not even the locals of the town seemed to care. They just seemed oblivious to the massacre of children that was happening each year. These stupid plot holes were the nail in the coffin for any respect I had for the show's story. Overall, it was a poorly written, unorganised story that had no planning or flow. The characters are literally the worst part of the show. They're all just reused anime stereotypes. There are no original characters, even the main characters are dull and one-dimensional. If you've watched anime for even a little while, you've probably seen these stereotypes used many times before. The characters were just empty, which made it even weirder when they just randomly changed personalities between episodes. What they should have done was created a steady progression of change instead of them changing like a light switch. There was even a slight romance between the 2 main characters, but it was never really directly addressed. It was just weirdly hinted at and then avoided. It was almost like the writers couldn't handle anything serious, so they just avoided everything. The side characters were even more bland than the main characters. I mean, some of them were literally not developed whatsoever, only put in there for extra death scenes. Now, the animation was not as bad as the writing, but it didn't save the show. At some parts the animation looked pretty good, the detail was nice, the colour palette was interesting and it looked quite smooth. But in other parts it just looked terrible. They somehow managed to go from decent animation to just awful animation. Lots of the shots lacked detail, things started to look unrealistic and the fluidity of the animation seemed to disappear. Even to the point where it looked like characters were just teleporting. The worst part of the animation was the death scenes. They were made in such an over-the-top way that it was impossible to take them seriously. They just looked ridiculous. I'm not sure who was in charge of choreographing the death scenes, but they should be fired. Despite starting off okay, overall Another was a mess. Very little was done correctly, in fact very little was done at all. The show never peaked, it just got progressively worse as the story went on. Clearly the writers couldn't handle anything serious. The story was all over the place in terms of pacing and direction. Not once did the anime have a clear path or story that it wanted to follow. Way too many things were left either poorly explained or not explained at all, leaving you with a very disappointed feeling after watching the show. Really, this just seemed like an excuse to show a bunch of gory death scenes and hope people buy the Blu-rays. I would not recommend anyone to watch this anime, not even ironically. It doesn't even deserve an ironic watch. So thank you for watching my review of another. If you want to watch another one of my reviews, click one of them on the screen. Remember to also click the subscribe button to be notified when I upload more videos as well. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.